Hello class, welcome to today's segment whereby we shall be discussing things to note, mistakes to avoid in regards to the writing module. So let's get right into it. Practice, practice, practice. This is by actually writing and not only in your mind. Guys, as I said, any IELTS test is only perfected through practice. And especially in writing, please practice by actually doing by writing. Not only just going through a sample or an example of a written text and just keeping it in your mind and taking that as your actual practice. When I say practice, this means that you read a question, you time yourself for 1 hour, and you actually write that essay. If it's academic, you actually write part 1, which is about describing charts, and you do the part 2, which is about writing essays. If it's general, you actually write a letter and you write the essay for part 2. So guys, practice by writing. Do not just practice in mind. You get what I mean? Please, please, please. Check on your timing in each part and leave room for counter checking your spelling and flow etc. Guys, once you do your practice test, please gauge how long it takes you to complete part 2 and how long it takes you to complete part 1. This is so that you can gauge how much time you may need for each part. Say maybe you realize you are quite slow in doing part 2. Then you're going to allocate maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes for part 2, and then for part 1, you allocate 20 minutes. If you realize maybe in part 2 you're a little bit faster, you can allocate maybe 25 minutes for part 2, and then the remaining is it 25 minutes for part 2 to do the actual writing, and then you take 20 minutes for part 1 to do the actual writing. So in your practice test, just gauge how much time each part requires to do writing, and then also gauge how much time each part requires for you to counter check your spelling, your flow, so that when you go to the actual exam room, you begin with your stronghold and you finish with your weak points. So timing is key in writing module. So before you go to the actual exam, please check on your timing and ensure that you are well conversant with how much time you need for each part. Practice so that you know how to A. Fasten your speed. B. Leave time to check for corrections. C. How to maximize / minimize your words to be in the required range. So guys, while you do your practice test, you are practicing how to fasten up your speed to ensure that you do not run out of time during your actual test. So in your practice test, make sure you only take 60 minutes. Do not add yourself additional time just because you're practicing. No. If you're towards the exam date, by this time you should follow strictly the rules of the exam. During the first practice tests, maybe the first 5, you can practice on how to maximize or increase the quality of your writing. But as you get towards the actual date of your exam, you should treat every practice test as your actual examination. So you should allocate exactly 60 minutes for the whole examination. Okay. You should also learn on how to leave time for corrections. Do not only allocate maybe 40 minutes for part 2 and 20 minutes for part 1, but in this 40 minutes, you spend the whole 40 minutes in doing writing. Remember, nobody is perfect, so probably in your writing there can be spelling errors, use of wrong tenses, etc. So always leave room for correction. So if you've allocated 40 minutes maybe in part 2, ensure that at most 35 minutes is for doing the actual writing, and at least 5 minutes to check for corrections. This is very important, because you can be the best writer, but if your essay or your explanations are full of spelling errors, wrong tenses, then nobody is going to know that you're a great writer. So please always leave room for correction. Okay. Also, this extra time you're leaving is also for ensuring that you are within the required word count, which we all know that for part 2 you are required to write at least for part 1 you are required to write at least 150 words and above, and for part 2 you are required to write 250 words and above. There's no limit to how many words you can write, but the good range is, if for part 1 you can do 170 to 175 words, for part 2 you can do 270 to 275 words. Okay. Something very important to note: use 3 to 5 minutes to plan for the structure of your writing and key points before you begin writing. This is especially important for part 1. This enables you to have clear flow and direction in your writing, and that you do not get stuck in the middle of writing. It also saves you time in the long run, as there is zero hesitation during writing. Guys, before you begin writing, either part 1 or part 2, please take some time to write down key points that you're going to be writing about. For example, for part 2, for example, you've allocated 40 minutes for part 2. So the last 5 to 7 minutes should be used, 5 to 7 to 10 minutes maximum should be used in counter-checking your work. And the first 1 to a maximum of 5 minutes should be used in writing your key points, which you will be writing in your essay. Please guys, do not just get right into writing and then in the middle of the essay you are like, first of all, where do I go next? So to avoid such kind of errors, because stopping in the middle of writing will really eat into your time. So please, before you start writing, always note down your key points. For example, if you know that, for example, you are writing an essay about problems of deforestation, you should write a change of, this is just an example, your key points should be something like change in weather patterns, displacement of animals, of wild animals. You write about 5 points, and these points are the points you're going to talk about in your essay. This will ensure that once you've written about one problem, then you don't spend time thinking of the next problem. You just go to the key points you noted, and you know that my next paragraph should be about A, B, and C. You write down. This will really save you time in the long run. So please, before you begin any writing, note down your key points. Okay. The difference between computer-based and paper-based in regards to the writing module. Computer-based allows you to clearly see word counts, so you do not physically need to count your words. You can also see the time left at the top of your computer screen. This makes you very time conscious. So guys, if you're doing computer based, as I had said earlier, the screen indicates the amount of words that you have written so far. So it will show you you've written so far maybe 100 words, maybe 200 words. So you do not need to count the words. The time is also shown at the top of your computer, so it will be trickling down. For example, it begins at 60 minutes, and then as the time goes down, it goes 59, 58, 57, and it also shows you the seconds. So 56.12 seconds till 0.00 seconds, and then when it gets to 0.0 seconds, the computer just shuts itself down. And remember, it's auto saved, so you do not need to save your work. Anything you write down, it is automatically saved. So yeah, for paper based, during your practice, estimate the required length by writing on an actual A4 paper so that you don't need counting during the examination. So guys, if you're doing paper based, as I said earlier, always write down on your practice test, always use A4 papers, because this is an A4 paper, or rather answer sheet, is the one that you use in the actual exam. And then while you're doing your practice test, estimate where 150 words is for part 1 and where 250 words is for part 2, so that you do not waste time in counting during the actual exam. But after you finish your test, if you have remaining time, you can count your words. But if you've been practicing, then you will not need to. Something important to note: while practicing, ensure that you are able to concentrate for 2 hours 45 minutes straight, as taking a bathroom break will be the end of you. Guys, this is very, very important. As I said, the writing test is the last test. And remember, by this time, you will have already done your listening test for 30 minutes, 5 minutes break. You've done your reading test for 1 hour, and then 5 minutes break. And then now you're doing your writing test for 1 hour. So you should be able to concentrate for the whole 2 hours, 45 minutes. Remember, if you take a bathroom break, you are not given additional time. So if you take, maybe it's like 1 hour, see, writing is 1 hour, you go to the bathroom, that is a minimum of like 5 minutes and even 10 minutes. So remember, your time will have already reduced by 10 minutes. So now you have 50 minutes for writing. Guys, just practice sitting down and concentrating for 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's not a long time, so with practice, you'll just get used to it. Yes. Quality over quantity is very important in the writing module. Remember, they are testing your ability to express your points in English and not necessarily your knowledge. Testing is done in regards to understanding of the question and flow of points. Guys, the writing module, they are not testing your knowledge of a certain topic. They're not testing whether you know about engineering or deforestation or journalism or road traffic. That is not what they are testing. They are just testing your ability to communicate what you think is right. It necessarily does not mean it has to be the right thing. It just has to be what you believe in, and you're able to communicate to them. So if you believe that deforestation causes maybe landmines or something like that, they're testing your ability to communicate that deforestation causes landmines. Not necessarily that it is not true that deforestation does not cause landmines. Hope I make sense. They're just testing your ability to communicate, not your knowledge. But this does not mean that you write the wrong information, because they're also testing your ability to understand the question they've asked you. So they cannot ask you about maybe trees and then you begin talking about wild animals. That does not make sense. You should talk about trees in regards to what you know about trees. That will show that you understand the context of your question and you understand what you've been asked. But it does not necessarily mean what you are saying is true. It just has to be true to you. I think I'll explain this well in an example during our live classes. Yes. Observe the mode of writing in the reading module, as this gives you an idea of what is expected of you. So guys, remember the writing module, you are usually given an essay or not essay, you're given passages, and then from these passages you are asked questions whereby you need to answer those questions from the passage. You remember? So if you observe the way they've written the passages in the reading module, then this gives you an idea of what is expected of you in the writing module. Because you'll see in the reading module, the structure of their passages is like an introduction statement. After introduction statement, they give an explanation of the introduction statement or of their point. After that, they give an example. So just the way they've written the reading module gives you an idea of what they expect of you in the writing module. So also during your practice, you can always go through the reading module passages and then you see that, this is what they expect. Okay. If you see time is running out, please do not panic. Write till the last minute. Prioritize finishing versus counter-checking. Finish each part completely before moving to the next part. So guys, for example, you are running out of time. You see that 5 minutes have remained and you are not through. Please just write to the last minute. Write to the last minute. Do not prioritize counter-checking your work to finishing the work. What do I mean by this? For example, as I said, see, first you write and then after you finished writing, you're going to counter-check your work. But in this instance, you've not finished writing, so that automatically means you've not counter-checked. So do not go to counter-check your work, just finish writing till the point you'll get to. This is because communication is key as opposed to finish. Like this shows, if you write till the end, this shows that you understood the structure of the writing module. The structure being introduction, body paragraph, and conclusion. But if you leave your maybe essay at body paragraph, then the examiner is going to think that you do not understand the structure of the writing module, which should be body paragraph, introduction, body paragraph, or body paragraphs, and conclusion. So just aim to finish your writing your tests. Yes, but as I said earlier, finish each part at a time. If you've begun with part 2, write part 2, then counter check it, and then proceed to part 1. Write part 1 and then when you finish, counter check it. Do not write part 2 and then you go to part 1 without counter checking. This is because if you run out of time, you will not have perfected part 2 and then you will not have perfected part 1. So that will really lower your score. But for example, you run out of time, but your part 2 is perfect. Your part 1 is the one that maybe has some errors and all that. Your part 2 is going to be your stronghold, and then your part 1 maybe you just get average marks. But if you've not perfected any part, then there will be no stronghold. You get what I mean? Yes. And as I wind up, Please remember, my advice as a tutor is always begin with part 2 and then end with part 1, because part 2 carries 60% of your marks in the writing module. Part 1 carries 40% in the marks of the writing module. So part 2 carries more weight, thus it's more important. Please take note of this. Okay guys, we've come to the end of our segment, and please take every point to heart. Do not ignore any points. Okay guys, see you in our next class. Bye.